familiar with that.
Okay, perfect. Welcome, everybody.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Yep.
Greetings all.
Yep. Hello. Hello.
Greetings.
Everybody's supposed to be muted. I don't know what's happening.
You
Hello.
want to?
Hello. Yep. Welcome,
Hello.
everyone. Go ahead and mute yourselves, okay? And pop your info in the chat where you're calling in from. So glad to have you tonight.
See
We'll get started in just a momento.
in the chat.
All right, chat is on the bottom, and you just see the little chat bubble, click it, and then that opens up your chat window on the side, and you can tell us where you're calling in from tonight. Glad you're here. Yeah. All right, Chevy Chase. Okay. All right, welcome. Okay, guys. Keeping an eye on everybody coming in. And lost my Zoom. There it is. Here we go. Welcome, everybody. We will get started in just a minute or so. Make sure our waiting room is emptying out. Don't see anybody else in there. Hi, guys. Silver Spring in the house. Chevy Chase. Okay. Rachel, are you letting folks in?
I wasn't, but I can. I'm trying to just keep track of who's here.
Yeah, oh, but that's fine. Just go ahead and do that. Anna, let me make you a co-host just in case.
Okay.
And I don't see anybody else in the waiting room, so
Folks might continue to join.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, gang, thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Dee Clarkin. I'm the executive director of Indivisible Montgomery, and if you are coming in tonight because you saw our invite out on Mobilize and you're not from the DC area, welcome, welcome. If you are from the Montgomery County and you are not a member of Indivisible Montgomery, we are happy to have you. And if you're looking for an activist home in Montgomery County, that is Montgomery County, Maryland, not Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. We would be happy to have you join us. The QR code there on the screen is our how to join our Indivisible Montgomery. So yeah, so if you're not from the area, just in case, we are located just north of Washington, DC, and we've been around since 2016. We do all kinds of stuff, all kinds of activism. Right now we're focusing on elections, Virginia, New Jersey. We have a very active phone banking operation going on right now. Would love to have your help on that. And we do lots of other things like big No Kings and Chevy Chase last weekend. That was awesome. Like had about we think pretty close to 3,000 people there. So super excited for that. And we need lots more and also to shift up tactics. But tonight what we're going to be talking about is, let me just advance the slide one more. Just a little housekeeping there for you. So you don't have to worry about, writing things down. We will be recording this. Thank you so much to our guest from CCAN. Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing now. And we'll keep an eye out on the waiting room in case we have more people. So with that was your housekeeping for the night. I'd like to introduce my colleague Anna Winthrop at this point. And Anna is with our Constituent Power Committee for Indivisible Montgomery. Anna, would you like to take it away and talk about what we're doing here?
Okay, sure. Well, thank you, first of all, for everyone showing up here tonight. So Dee had this great idea a little while back to create a constituent power committee, and we decided there's so much going on with Indivisible. And for those of you who've been involved with Indivisible for a while, much of the work that they do as a national organization and that we also partake in is to combat the authoritarian takeover we're seeing at the federal level. And we decided, well, we still have a functioning government here in Maryland, so let's focus also on state and local issues because we actually can get some things done. And we decided to focus on different policy areas. My area was environment. And we reached out to the Chesapeake Climate Action Network because they are an incredible organization that has just a great track record for getting legislation passed that is combating climate change, promoting clean energy, addressing climate justice. They have an incredible track record, but they're also a grassroots organization that welcomes and relies on the participation of people in local communities. And so I'm thrilled. I'm going to be introducing the Maryland director for Chesapeake Climate Action Network. She's here with us tonight and she's going to present. And I just want to, before I'm going to do this at the end, after you've heard a bit about what we're currently working on in conjunction with CCAN. But in a moment, I'm going to pop some information in the chat because part of what we want to do tonight, in addition to educating people about the work that CCAN is doing and what we're collaborating with them on in this moment, is to hopefully recruit folks to get a bit more involved. So we have some opportunities to do some advocacy work directly with senators coming up. I'm in particular going to be looking to recruit folks who are in District 15, if anybody's in the Potomac area, in and around there. And I'm going to also include in the chat a tool where you can look up your district. But I will pop some info in the chat now. I'm going to think I'll do it again at the end, but especially if anybody has to leave early, feel free to copy this and paste it. I'm going to give you some links for CCAN as well as my direct contact. Anybody here who's interested in collaborating with us and advocating with us for specifically, we're going to talk about the Renew Act and the Strategic Energy Investment Funds. You can contact me directly, and I will work with you directly on getting you involved. However, that works for you. So I'm going to pop info in the chat, and then I'm going to, actually, I'll probably do that after. I'm going to introduce Brittany because she is here with us, and I'm very excited to have her as our guest. Brittany leads lobbying and advocacy efforts at CCAN here in Maryland. She is a lead advocate for Maryland's Make Polluters Pay movement and spearheaded the effort for the bill's passage during Maryland's 2025 legislative session. We're going to be talking about this tonight in more depth. Before joining CCAN, Brittany worked in the office of Maryland State Delegate Laura Charkoudian on energy, food systems, mental health, and pedestrian safety legislation. She also supported the delegate by coordinating her annual Power in the Park events, which connect local communities to resources for reducing their energy burdens and registering for clean energy programs. Brittany loves gardening, trying new restaurants, local festivals that celebrate diversity, and she is a mom of 3 kids too. So that is, I can relate to the crazy that entails, but welcome, Brittany.
Thank you so much. And yes, the crazies are always happening. And you all stay up late. I'm usually in bed by now, but I'm glad to be with you today to share some information. And I just want to shout out really quickly while I'm pulling up my slides to Steve Nay, because I see we both live in Tacoma Park. I also am a Montgomery County resident, District 20. And then also David Reed, I think you look familiar as well. I think you're between the creeks like me too. So as Anna already shared, if you have questions while I'm going through the slides, feel free to drop them in the chat so you don't have to hold that in your brain. And then I'll address all the questions at the end of my very short presentation. And I also have a few links as well, Anna. So maybe I'll lighten your load a little bit tonight. So I'm here to talk about the Renew Act and the associated veto override that we're working on right now. This picture is from 2024 when the Renew Act didn't make any progress in the legislature. But this year it actually did pass as a study bill. And so we'll dig into that a little bit. So the history of Renew, it is one of the part of the national movement called Make Polluters Pay, which was started by U.S. Senator Van Hollen, so our Maryland senator. And the idea of Make Polluters Pay is that we could use the Superfund legislation, which we all know is a well-established environmental legal principle that says when you make a mess, you need to clean it up. And so this is the first time that various jurisdictions are trying to apply that principle to the global climate. New York and Vermont have already passed climate superfund laws. And of course, they're caught up in court a little bit because the largest, most polluting fossil fuel companies aren't going to let us, hold them accountable easily. But those lawsuits are moving forward, and the Vermont lawsuit specifically, we expect some initial verdict this year. And so always when I'm talking about climate superfund, people ask, okay, is this the same as suing polluters? And it's not. When we sue polluters, we are the ones taking the legal action, and we do expect after the bill passes, we will be the ones to be sued, but that's okay. Continuing. So here in Maryland, our climate superfund bill is called the Renew Act, and that stands for Responding to Emergent Needs from Extreme Weather. And our bill sponsors who have been sticking with it all these years are Senator Hester from Howard County, Delegate Fraser Hidalgo, who's one of our Montgomery County legislators, and Delegate Bawafo as well, who represents Prince George's County. And in 2024 specifically, we shopped around the bill for co-sponsors, and you see legislators from all over the state were willing to sign their names and say that they believe that a bill like this should move forward. This is 2024 because last year we pre-filed the bill to ensure that we would get an early hearing date, and because of that, we didn't shop for co-sponsors. So again, the overview of the Renew Act is we want the largest, most polluting fossil fuel companies to pay into our state for their historical emissions. And this payment will be a one-time payment based on their emissions from 1994 to 2023. And the line of cutoff, because it's not the case that we want to hold every fossil fuel entity accountable. We just want to focus on the largest, most polluting businesses. And so the only qualified companies, the covered companies, would have had to emit over 1 billion tons of greenhouse gases during that time frame. And so once these costs are assessed, and we collected the funds, they will be held in the Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Fund, which would have qualified expenditures all across the state, ranging from buying heat pumps for schools to relocating wastewater treatment facilities on the Eastern Shore, all the way to upgrading stormwater infrastructure in urban environments. So the bill that passed through the legislature last year was just the study portion of the bill, which is still very important. Over the summer, the Comptroller's Office has been doing some initial conversations with agencies to determine, Is this study needed? Are you already doing work that's similar? And agencies were sharing that right now they're not. They really do need this cost calculation information to know the things that they are thinking we need to do to build resilience. How much will those projects cost? And can we start to prepare? And so, additionally, the study bill was scheduled to cost $500,000, and we were going to use SEEF funds, that's Strategic Energy Investment Funds, and we'll talk about that special fund a little bit later in more depth. But we're going to use the funding from the SEEF to pay for the bill. And this is a quick overview of qualified expenditures. I like to show this because it just shows, especially for people who are not as familiar with climate impacts and with how much climate change is affecting Maryland, it shows that the qualified expenditures run the gamut because the impacts run the gamut. So I really appreciate this slide. So the things that went well this year in the Renew campaign, we definitely brought in the coalition. And part of that was leading with the qualified expenditures. Not only do you feel affected by climate change, but how are you viewing our stabilized climate future? And there are a lot of entities that say, yes, I do want to sign up for that. Yes, we are about to renovate. We can do it in a net zero fashion. Help us. Also, we started to prove this year that climate change and climate impacts aren't only happening in Anne Arundel County and Ellicott City, because historically, those are two communities in Maryland that we focus on when we think of climate change, specifically sea level rise and flooding. But we see this across the state, whether it's Highland Beach in Prince George's County or Frederick Road in Baltimore City. Unfortunately, Maryland, we call ourselves America in miniature. And in the same fashion, we almost see every climate impact that happens in the entire United States. And then lastly, what went well this year is we passed the first part of the bill. We passed the study, and the comptroller committed to the work. And she was so excited to do the work that right after session, she had a whole Earth Day event where she did a press conference. She had panel discussions, all focused on her commitment to climate and specifically doing the Renew study. But unfortunately, the governor vetoed the bill in May, right after the comptroller's Earth Day event, and it was really disappointing. But his rationale that he gave was that, and this part is very true, the chaos from Washington, D.C. have made each day more challenging than the next. And so there was a desire to have some flexibility in terms of what agencies are working on and how we're using our funding. But then right on the back end of that historic veto, what happened? Maryland had a very difficult climate summer. We had more heat illness and heat deaths than we had seen in 5 years. We had more flash flood warnings than we had in 5 years. I know since everyone on this call is in Montgomery County, I'm sure some of you remember the day that specifically in Tacoma Park, our precious Sligo Creek rose 10 feet in 30 minutes. And people had to be rescued. Now, fortunately, we do have resilience infrastructure in Tacoma Park. We are used to shutting down Sligo Creek Parkway. It's part of our culture to know that sometimes that road shuts down because of flooding. But in a lot of places around Maryland, they don't have that resilience. They haven't built in those habits. And last but not least, we know that at the beginning of the summer, Allegheny County experienced some extreme flooding that was very difficult for them. And then Maryland applied for FEMA supports, and we were denied. And so this summer proved on its own that we need the Renew Act study to move forward. And of course, that once the study is completed, we should also assess these costs on the largest, most polluting fossil fuel companies. And so we're now working to call on the Maryland General Assembly to override the veto. So I'll pause there and I'll take renew specific questions and then I'll jump into the CEF.
Okay, guys, you could raise your hand or you could pop a question in the chat. We will keep an eye on the chat, and we'll also look for raised hands. To raise your hand, you just go down to react at the bottom by the heart. Let us see our gallery view here, see if I see any raised hands. I have questions, of course. If nobody else does, I'm not seeing anything. Alyssa, do you want to go ahead? Just
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Brittany. I'm just wondering, I know you had that slide about Governor Moore rationalizing the veto. Is there any more explanation on that? I'm just curious.
Yes, I can put that in the chat for you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, Ellen.
I was just wondering how they calculate the emissions and how they might determine, in other words, the amount of the emissions and the cost associated with those emissions. And I understand some of that would be part of the study, but I was just wondering if you had any information about that.
Great question. So the calculation of emissions actually is already done. That's part of the carbon majors report. That's public. It's online. I can put that in the chat as well, actually. It's not guaranteed that the state will use that carbon majors data set for determining who has emitted the amount of fossil fuel, the amount of emissions that we have outlined in the bill. But it's possible. That's what we're suggesting. But of course, as more and more states pass this legislation and they info share with each other, there are other ways to identify which entities to hold liable. Secondarily, you asked about calculating the costs. So that is what we need to do. And most likely the methodology that will be used is loss and damage calculations. But again, that's up to the determination of the comptroller.
Okay, we have some questions in the chat. Owner says, how long for the study? How long for the study if it passes? Do you mean how long will it take for the study, or is that what you mean? Maybe.
Yes, how long would the study take?
The study was projected to take about 15 months when originally outlined from last session. We're hoping that when we override the veto, which will happen within the first week or so of legislative session, because our codified language in Maryland is they can't start any new business without addressing veto overrides. Otherwise, you miss your opportunity. But as soon as the veto is overridden, the work can resume. So we're hoping for when the veto is overridden, the language that will remain in the bill is a December 2026 due date for the study. However, if that becomes a challenge or if it doesn't seem like that timeline can be met, then we do have the opportunity to pass amendment legislation during session in order to adjust the time frame. I see your question in the chat as well, David. What percentage of resources would be used for mitigation versus adaptation? And thank you for the compliment. But right now, the qualified expenditure language does not outline how much needs to go to any particular program, because we did want to build in some flexibility. When this bill was initially drafted, it was prior to the Trump administration. And we inherently knew that flexibility is useful when you're trying to pass a bill and also when you're trying to manage the finances of a state. But especially now that we're having such challenges from the federal administration, I think that flexibility of not determining how much of the funding would need to go to any particular place is particularly important. And one other thing I'll say about that, so even though this is a one-time assessment, which is intentional because we don't want this to function as a tax, we don't want this to be something that the fossil fuel companies can easily pass on to consumers, but they are able to pay it in the original language as a one-time payment or as payment split up across 10 years. And so technically, we don't know how much of the total assessment will be coming in at any specific year. And so that's another reason that the flexibility is really useful.
Brittany, also we have in the chat, Nicolette is asking, who are the biggest historical polluters?
So the carbon majors report that I put into the chat says all of them, but the ones I usually speak about are ExxonMobil, Chevron, Saudi Aramco. Those names usually help people to understand the type of companies that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. I see Ellen's got her. Ellen, is that an old hand or a new one?
It's a new one. I just had one other question.
Sure, go for it.
Would they be able to do work to repair or mitigate instead of making a payment, or is it just the payment?
Great question. So right now it's just a payment. Right now it's just a payment.
Brittany, I have a question. We still have another check, but I have a political question.
Mhm.
So strategy-wise, we know that this has to be accomplished right away at the beginning of the legislature. So obviously, right? I mean, the veto, the override, sorry. Right?
Right.
Okay. So we need to get this all accomplished before they even open up the session, right? Basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's an important piece of the conversation right now because a
Mhm.
lot of organizations, including CCAN, Sierra Club, Progressive Maryland, whomever, we are
Mhm.
starting to think about our legislative priorities. And this is not one of them because the work has to be done in advance. All the work
Right.
on the veto override is happening now
Right.
into November and December. And pretty much legislators' minds will be made up by the time we start session. And we'll either see that in a vote or in not a vote. So we have to let them know that this is really important to us right now.
Right. So, before I get, I'm assuming we're going to talk a bit about, what we can do as members here to pressure our respective, senators and delegates. But do we have commitment already from the original co-sponsors or, the folks, you flashed up the slide that had the original, the authors and then the co-sponsors. Are those folks already committed to teeing up a vote to override? Have they made statements or?
So throughout the last about 6 weeks, what we've been doing is engaging constituents to email their legislators and start a dialogue. Are you ready to vote for a veto override on this issue? Or do you have any hesitation? There are a lot of legislators that have already shared their commitment to a override vote, and many of them are in Montgomery County. But here's the caveat. Only the speaker and the Senate president can guarantee that a vote will be held. They have to bring up the vote. And so if the vote is not brought up, even the legislators that have already said they want to override the veto, they won't be able to.
So that's the Speaker of the House of Delegates and the Senate President.
Right.
Okay. Are those reachable or what's your feeling on that?
They're in active conversation about it right now. That's my feeling. And so over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll really have to show that this is important to us by emailing your legislators. Anna put in the chat already the email, we call it internally an email to target, but it's just a link that allows you to automatically determine who your legislator is, and
Yeah.
it gives you sample language, and you can immediately send it. And every person that completes this form, at the bottom, you can check in to say that you want to receive further communications from CCAN. But what's more important is when you submit your information through that link, what I can do later is create a petition and put in petition format how many people care about this issue, and give that to the speaker and the Senate president to say, look, 1,000 Marylanders emailed their legislators. We must bring this to a vote. So
Right.
the best thing to do right now is to fill out, to email your legislators through this link. But the second best thing you can do is to, here, I have a link for this, if you're part of an organization, you can sign our organizational letter to say that you care about the veto override of the Renew study,
Mhm.
and to show that in an organizational sense, that our coalition is large, diverse, and spans across geographic territories is important as well.
Great. Thank you for that. And I see that earlier we had a question, a little technical on I'm not a lawyer. What distinguishes this from an ex post facto penalty? And you put in, Brittany, looks like you already responded with a blog from, maybe that's, I don't know, Columbia Law Review. Okay.
Mhm.
So
But
that's,
also, Jonathan, if you want more information on that, please email me.
I'll have to read the blog post. Thank you.
great. More questions? Does this all is there like, don't be shy, guys. If there's something here that you don't understand, or it's kind of complicated, feel free to ask. This is you. We got the expert here with us tonight, so.
Well, that's okay if there aren't more questions.
Okay.
We can move on. So I know another thing we wanted to discuss today is the Strategic Energy Investment Fund and how that has been used recently for budget relief, which on one hand, we are, especially last session, we were in a very tight budget situation. Initially, all of the cuts came from some disability programs. And so there was a robust fight back against that. And then they went to the other direction and said, well, let's take the funding we need from our environmental community. And that was a big loss. So now this session, we really want to highlight that the Strategic Energy Investment Fund is really useful for Marylanders. It helps us to deploy more clean energy. It helps us to renovate schools, and the comptroller just put out a report about that, how dilapidated our schools are and how much they need to be retrofit, and some need to be completely torn down and reconstructed. And the Strategic Energy Investment Fund is a pot of money that we can use to do that, not only get it done, but get it done in the best way, which is to build net zero schools like Halliburton Academy in Baltimore City. And then also you can use the Strategic Energy Investment Fund for low income energy assistance and for projects like the climate cost study. So it's a really important special fund that we should protect and utilize well. And so our motto going into session is don't use the CEF for budget relief. And so I can share out this fact sheet with everyone. But the main things to know are the recent diversions from the CEF from last year specifically. Like I was saying, it was a really tough budget year. Last year was incredibly tough. This year should be a lot, not as tough, but next year will be tough again because of how expensive the blueprint is. But last year there were $2 billion worth of cuts across state agencies and funds, and the CEF faced the largest singular cut, which was 315 million taken from the CEF overall. Also, 230 million of that was sent to the general fund. Some of it was used for staff to fund staff time at agencies, but some of it was sent to the general fund. Another change that was made last year was they made a permanent change to move the interest accumulated because previously any interest accumulated by the CEF fund would stay in the CEF. And so we've permanently lost that. And then also they made some changes to say that a Reggie auction revenue, and Reggie, by the way, is an energy sector carbon pricing program that we participate in. It's a regional program that we participate in with some neighbor states, and it really does. It's very useful to help us reduce our emissions and to have a small revenue source, and we put it all in the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. And so right now it only has specific uses that we can, specific things we can do with Reggie auction revenue, but they changed the language to say that we can use it for general expenses and to avoid some of the requirements for using Reggie funds for low income communities. And so you see the diversions are just getting more far away from the original intention, and we don't want this to continue. So that's going to be another thing that we're really focused on, and we would love constituent support to remind legislators and the governor's team that the CEF should not be used for budget relief.
So questions on the CEF that is being rated here, right and left, it looks like. I have a quick question. How was the CEF originally, how long ago was it set up? And what is the the statutory authority for this CEF? Is it something that comes out of the Maryland budget, or could the Renew Act, the polluter pay scheme that we hope to get to, right? Through the Renew Act work, could those funds go into the CEF?
Great question. So the CEF was established in 2008. Originally, yes, I'll share it, Val. Originally, it was the deposit space for Reggie auction funds. And currently, it's also the second source of income for the CEF is alternative compliance payments. Alternative compliance payments are what utilities buy when they don't want to buy solar renewable energy credits because the price is too high. And instead, they'll buy ACP payments because they serve as a price ceiling. And so that's a problem too, honestly. And Delegate Charkoudian, one of our most fantastic, always proactive clean energy advocates, is putting forth a bill this session that will focus on reforming the solar renewable energy credit program. And then also what it will do is instead of allowing ACP payments to go to the CEF, we will hold ACP payments in an escrow account so that when the SREC price is lower than ACP's, then utilities can use the funds to buy SRECs. And this is important because ACP or funding to support solar, which when not used well goes to ACPs, that comes from our utility bills. We're literally giving the state the money to support the solar projects. So for them to take that money and then use it to balance the budget, that's just not right. That's regressive, and that's not the intention. So I think I answered both of your questions.
Wow. Thank you.
Hi, I've got a question. I'm sorry, can't
Go ahead.
find the hands up right now. Can't find
That's
the
okay.
hand. And can't find the chat. So it's a little bit on the side, but it's still talking about, energy, and you were just mentioning like solar credits, and I just wonder, this is a little bit next door to your last comment, but your last discussion, but Maryland used to give homeowners a grant or a rebate of $1,000 for rooftop solar. And then that was canceled last year, I understand, just as I was putting on my rooftop solar. And is that going to come back? Do you know? Because we're also going to lose the federal credits. So we're going to lose a lot of incentives for rooftop solar, which was really, starting to make headway in Maryland recently.
Great question. So I'm not sure about the specific grant that you're referring to. Do you know if it was through the Maryland Energy Administration?
Well, I don't really know, because by the time I was ready to apply for it, I read that it was canceled, but I had read that it was there before, and I'm not quite sure.
Okay,
came
so
from.
I also don't know whether it was a state, MEA grant. There also, we're fortunate to live in Montgomery County because we get sometimes county incentives for clean energy and a building electrification, and even in some of our cities have special programs. So sometimes it's difficult to tell, where exactly the program is coming from and where the money is coming from. But I'll speak to this from one specific
Excuse
perspective,
me,
assuming that it might have been MEA.
yeah,
And
just
their
to say,
programming do
I know
change
it was
year to year.
state. I know it was state, excuse me. It wasn't county or, city, but I don't know which agency. Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. So if it was MEA, Maryland Energy Administration, their programs can change from year to year. So it might be the case that they ended the specific program. But I'll try to follow up on that and get some information.
Sorry, it was slightly off topic.
No worries at all.
No. So, Brittany, back to the CEF, what do you see in terms of political strategy on that? Like, what do you see? What do you need from us to, influence?
Well, I think the biggest thing that we need as far as strategy is to make sure that the Maryland General Assembly knows that people know what the CEF is and what it is for, and that we recognize that it's been used inappropriately in the past. Once this awareness becomes very apparent, I think they will be less likely to raid that fund so often. And it makes me think of a program, Open Space, which is a special program that funds our parks and green spaces throughout Maryland. And that program has always been well protected. Even last year, when there are so many so many budget cuts, that program was cut a bit, but not a lot. And I think when we uplift the importance of that fund, we'll really see it will be protected a lot more readily. And I also want to address Jonathan's question in the chat. Do we need to address the recent rush to build data centers? Yes, tremendously. That is a slightly different topic. I usually address the data center conversation when I'm having one of my energy conversations, because even though CCAN focuses on clean energy and climate action, I think people first clean energy and climate action means paying a lot of attention to utility bills. And so two issues with data centers. One, of course, data centers are energy guzzlers, water guzzlers. And up until now, most states and localities didn't have the language in place to ensure that the distribution and transmission upgrades needed to serve data center energy demand didn't fall on ratepayers. Fortunately, in Maryland, specifically, Delegate Wilson, Chair Wilson from Economic Matters really attends to that. And so last year in the Next Generation Energy Act, there was nation leading language put forth in the bill to say, no, be sure that if we allow data centers to come in our state, we set up a rate structure that has them paying for distribution and transmission infrastructure and not our Marylanders. But the other situation in regard to data centers are the forecast, because right now utility bills are really high. And we're seeing that data center forecasts are increasing, specifically our supply charges on our utility bills. And the exact mechanism is through PJM's capacity market auction, but I won't get too in the weeds on that tonight. So that's another thing that, last year we kind of addressed data center rates and how they're absorbing their own costs instead of socializing their costs. But there is more work to do in terms of forecast, peak load forecast accountability.
Okay, so yeah, Joe, go ahead.
The bill you referenced that would ask data centers to fund their own infrastructure, was that passed in the General Assembly?
Yes.
Was
It was part
signed?
of the leadership energy package called the Next Generation Energy Act. It passed and it was signed.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
So we only have 10 more minutes. I think I could go on and on. In fact, the more that you talk, the more questions, and some of them are environmental type questions, and some are political and strategy type questions. But okay, Rachel, yeah, you got your hand up.
I have a quick question. The CEF concern is not legislative. It's just an expression of concern that CEF be protected.
Great question. Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So the way the budget works, and I'm not an expert on this piece because usually I don't deal so much with the budget. It's just something that I have to start paying attention to now. So the governor presents an initial proposal in the budget committees, and then the budget committees get to make changes, and then the House and the Senate vote on a finalized budget, and then the governor has to sign the budget at the same time that he signs the bills. And he actually does, it's a new privilege. As of 3 or 4 years ago, he can line item veto even after the legislature sends him back the budget. So when you have a motto like don't use the C for budget relief, you're right. Technically, that's not tied to any specific piece of legislation. However, I'm the type of person that likes to really analyze a problem, understand the root cause, and have a comprehensive approach. So at the same time that I'm having a general model of don't use the C for budget relief, also, as I was sharing a little bit before, Delegate Charkoudian is going to have that ACP escrow account in her solar bill. And so that is a proactive piece of legislation. And I'm also hearing that the Maryland Energy Administration is going to put forth a bill, potentially, it's not finalized, but they may put forth a bill that allows them a few more positive, aligned ways to use C funding. And so if they put forth that bill, I plan to support it as well, because that will help them get the money out of the door instead of it sitting around, which makes it so attractive for using it to balance the budget.
Thank you.
But since they made is there any possibility of reversing that permanent change they made that takes the interest from the fund? That's crappy. I mean,
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think there will be a lot of appetite for that.
Yeah, okay. Because
but
what funds Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I assume that it is possible, but just as you've
Yeah.
been, in your questioning, really emphasizing, one thing is the legislative possibilities, and another thing is the political possibilities.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think we only have 8 minutes left. This has been so fascinating. What should we talk? Anna, do you want to come back and
Hi,
talk about
yeah, well, thank
our,
you so much, Brittany. This is fantastic info. Just to clarify, this has been recorded. I believe it will be made available to everyone because there's a lot of good information in here. I myself have been able to meet with Brittany, and I will probably still go back and look at. I don't know if the slides are available on their own, Brittany, to share as well, but definitely I will be going back and making some notes from the presentation. I'm going to put things in the chat that I put in the beginning of the chat. Again, my main goal is to get people to contact me directly if you are interested in doing advocacy work with us in collaboration with CCAN. I'm specifically looking to set up some meetings with senators. I think the House members are mainly on board with the veto override. As Brittany said, this is the current focus before the legislative session starts, is to talk with our senators and our legislator, and our House members to let them know this is something that's on our radar, that we care about, specifically about the Renew Act and the study and the CEF funds. I've already set up a meeting with Senator Feldman, who is in District 15, and he sits on he's the head of the committee for, I want to say, energy, education, and environment. The environment part is the part we care about. And he is a key player, and so we really want to meet with him. And that meeting is, and I can pop this in the chat as well, but it's going to be a virtual meeting. So hopefully that'll make it a little easier. It is during the day, but it's on a Friday. So hopefully if people are working, it's more flexible. It's going to be Friday, November 14th at 11 a.m. I'm hoping to get people involved in that. And I will, of course, with anyone who's interested, we will follow up and ask questions and create a plan for the meeting and make sure everybody feels like they know what we're going to talk about and what they want to say. And, there will be a follow-up, of course, to prepare for that meeting and any other meetings that I actually, Brittany, Beth followed up with me about possibly collaborating with some other folks on other meetings with other senators. So I'm waiting to hear from her. But we were thinking about trying to set up meetings with other senators. Montgomery County has many districts, so it's a little confusing. But District 15, I would love to get some constituents of Senator Feldman's in on that meeting specifically.
that's
Again,
like Poolsville, guys, so like
Potomac, I
west.
think pulls up that
Yeah.
that area. But again, I have a tool. That I was sharing. Let me put all this back.
I'll do it for you, Anna. It's okay.
Okay, I put
Yeah.
some things in there. You can, if there's anything else you want to add.
Yeah, no. This,
Yeah,
guys,
I just want to welcome anybody to just email me as a follow-up to this. If you want to do any more, you can just start there, and I can facilitate any further action. And
great.
definitely, write if nothing else, if all else fails, write your legislators and let them know. And if you can personalize it, that's even better. Add why this is important to you.
Yeah, I just put in the thing, if you need to know, if you're not sure who your which is totally fair because Maryland is kind of crazy, who your Maryland state representatives are, that the link is in the chat.
Okay, yeah. I have that
yeah.
in my little thing as well. So hopefully everybody will find that.
Yeah.
My email, my personal email is getting bonkers. So I'm using my maryland@nosmallact.com. That is just my email. You can email me there. So please do feel free to reach out directly to me for further steps.
And the very last thing is the letter about
I have that in the link as well. So you can,
okay.
I
That's
have my email, I have the lookup, which you also shared. I also have a link that will take you to I do recommend everybody, I also have this at the very bottom, check out the CCAN website. They have so much information there, and ways to get, on their email list or join as a member. I also have a link that will take you straight to a page that talks a little bit about the Renew Act and gives you the options to email your legislator directly or as an organization, I believe. So
Yeah.
that should take you to both of those. So
See
I
if we
highly
can-
recommend just copy and paste that somewhere for after the meeting. So you have that, and I can write in the chat as well the dates for Senator Feldman. Oh, I didn't send it. I'm sorry. I pasted it. I didn't send it. Now it's up. Okay.
Okay.
And yes, so anyway, I think, if anybody has further questions, I don't want to take too much time. This information was wonderful. There's a lot, there. And I think this is just the first step. Hopefully we're going to continue working on many things down the road. I know there's some questions about some other things. This is just a time sensitive issue right now with the veto override.
Yeah, it's a priority. Okay, maybe it's 8:58. One last question from anybody, or this has been great. I just want to thank Brittany so much for her time. We are, super excited to be working with her to make positive change at our state level, which, one of the big lessons we're all focusing on now is to gear up to work in our states. And Indivisible Montgomery has been doing that for a couple of years now, but as we see the federal situation deteriorate, it's becoming more and more imperative that those of us who have blue states really be active in our personal we've been kind of letting ignoring Annapolis a bit, but no more. All right. Well, I'm going to let people go. And I just again want to thank Brittany and thank you, Anna, and everybody. I hope you took away some good info, and thank you so much for coming. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, Brittany, and thank you, everybody. Okay. All right.